So today we're going to do consciousness. So it's a mixture of talking about what consciousness is, and here in Illinois, and if you are in Illinois, maybe the first part of this discussion could involve some additional goodies. If you are so inclined. Hey, you're in the privacy of your own home, right? You're most likely not on campus. I know some students are on campus, still living on campus, because it's the only place they could go. But if you're at home, hey, and over 21, of course, over 21, then this first part of the discussion, investigation, consciousness. Maybe. Otherwise, drink your coffee. And then we'll talk about sleep. Please don't go back to it while we're talking about sleep. We're going to find out how much sleep debt you all have. So, good times. And since we already talked about dreams, I got rid of that. Since we talked about dreams on Tuesday, I got rid of that stuff. So, yeah, let's jump right into it. I should probably do that and do that. And I forgot what I did to get us started. Although, probably forgot to hit a button. So, yep, forgot to hit a button. Cool. So you see my lovely... There we go. Ah, yes. Talking in your sleep. Who talks in their sleep? Let me know. Let me know. We'll talk about parasomnias here in a little bit. We're just going to walk... You have to. All right. Jumping straight into the claim. It is a good song. It is. And you may have seen, you may have noticed this over the past several weeks that I like sharing some old music with y'all. We talked about a lot of new music at the beginning of the semester when I asked you what songs giving you life. Most of the songs I imagine that you all told me came out in the last couple of years. Now I get to show you music from my life. And the reason why it's music from my life, that song came out, I think, about the time I was born, but my mom listened to this, and so I just listen to it all the time, so that's why. By the way, go ahead and do that. Waiting for your responses on that one. Right? You can learn while you sleep was the claim. What'd you find? What did you find on the internet? What did you find? As I mentioned on Tuesday, Christine, I think, had started that conversation. You likely found conflicting pieces of information, so I'm interested to see what pops up here on the screen. You do not learn while you sleep, but can process what you learned that day while you sleep. All right, I think we're done. Very cool. We're out. We out! Just kidding, we're not. We're not out. So keep them coming. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. You tell me that you want me. You tell me that you need me. You can, but you can only during certain parts of your sleep. I imagine that reflects the stages that we're going to talk about today. Imagine that reflects the stages. You cannot learn while being asleep, but you can rehearse while you're asleep. Okay. Rehearse. Okay. I like that one. Ashton, I still want you to link me if you can. You can remember some stuff during your sleep. Yeah, okay. Can't learn while you sleep. You're able to process what you learned throughout the day. However, you cannot learn something new during your sleep. I like that one. Okay. So before we get to sleep, we're going to have to define what consciousness is. So, like, what is consciousness, even? Have you thought about that? Have you just sat down one day and thought to yourself, what is consciousness? Why am I conscious? Are we even awake? Is this the Matrix? Am I in a simulation? What would happen if I wasn't conscious? Does time stop when I'm not conscious? What happens when somebody is not conscious? Are robots conscious? Are amoebas conscious? Yeah. Stoner thoughts indeed. Stoner thoughts indeed. Yeah. But also just like human thoughts for like the entire existence of humans. Like, what does it mean to be alive? Is this real life? Right? David at the dentist, or whatever that kid's name is. Is this real life? You know? So, I've got some philosophical ideas for you. So here's the first page of consciousness. So, these folks are trying to define it. So John Searle, he's at Berkeley. He's an American philosopher, and so he's like, all right, let me try it. Consciousness refers to the states of sentience and awareness that typically begin when we awake from a dreamless sleep and continue until we go to sleep again. Christine, yes, they are. Don't try writing these down. I put them up this morning. Or fall into a coma or die or otherwise become unconscious. So he's like, fall into a coma or die or, everything else. Okay, so it's a great definition in that it really doesn't say anything. Okay. David Rosenthal is also an American philosopher. He's at the City University of New York. He said, we are conscious of something on this model, so what he's describing, and he says we have a thought about it. So when we're conscious, we have a thought. Okay? So thoughts, conscious. So a mental state will be conscious if it is accompanied by a thought about that state. Pretzels. Okay. The core of the theory, then, is that a mental state is not conscious state when and only when it is accompanied by a suitable hot or higher order thought. So you are not conscious unless you have some thought about being conscious, or language, or reasoning, or problem solving, or something like that. So that would be a higher order thought. Hey, I'm conscious because I can think about consciousness. Whoa, right? Keanu. Ned Block is also an American philosopher. He's a psychologist as well, and he's at NYU, and he said all of this stuff. So he separates what is P consciousness, which is your experience. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you the Cliff Notes version of it. P consciousness, which is your experience of things. So we'll call that qualia. And then he separates A consciousness, which is the ability to access your own thoughts. Okay? And so he calls it a mongrel concept, a mongrel. So it's a blending of the two. In order to be conscious, you need to both have an experience and access to that experience. Okay. Who is confused? I'm not frozen. I'm just waiting for people to say that they're confused. Just going with the flow. Okay. Confused. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. A little bit. Yep. Yep. You should be confused. Because this is all gobbledygook. This is all gobbledygook. Have you learned anything from any of this? Probably not. You have probably not learned anything at all from any of this. I mean, if you took something, then sure, maybe awareness, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's go to people who don't really care. Who are like, you know, this defining of consciousness isn't even worth it. Why should we care? So, our good buddy, cocaine addict Sigmund Freud was like, meh. Whatever. What is meant by consciousness? We need not discuss. It is beyond all doubt. He probably said that when he was high. Oh, yeah. So if you didn't know that about Sigmund Freud, he was a total coke fiend. Total coke fiend. Because in Victorian Austria, so Victorian Europe, turn of the 20th century, late 1800s, early 1900s, cocaine was everywhere. I'm sure you've heard the story that Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it. Bing, bing, bing. It did. This guy, though, he was rubbing it around his mouth all the time. Total coke fiend. Okay. So, if that's the only thing you remember about Sigmund Freud, I've done my job. Okay. John Watson, famous behaviorist, early 20th century, so early 1900s, 19-aughts, 19 teens. He said, who gives an F? And that's because he was a behaviorist, and he didn't care what was going on inside your brain, okay? It's not definite, nor is it usable, so who gives an S? All right? So the behaviorist, who has been trained as always an experimentalist, what you can observe, only what you can observe, holds further that the belief in the existence of consciousness goes back to the ancient days of superstition and magic. He is literally comparing your consciousness to superstition and magic. Your consciousness is magic. Hey, why not, right? We could be in the Matrix. That's magic too, yeah? It's just electricity. Electricity is magic. R.J. Joint. He's an Anglican priest, so he was British. So out here in the United States, it would be Episcopalian, right? So this is like the Church of England. He wrote, consciousness is like the Trinity, okay? The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost. If it is explained so that you understand it, it hasn't been explained correctly. Which is odd. I mean, I get it for consciousness, but for the Trinity, I feel like if you understand the Trinity, that I think it gets you closer to God, right? And so if somebody explains the Trinity to you, I think you should be able to be like, yeah, okay, I understand it. I'm closer to God now. Should be. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, depending on your faith and your understanding of the Trinity, or whether or not you actually understand it. I mean, somebody has to understand the Trinity, right? Just like somebody has to understand consciousness, but you know, it's great. I like it. All right. Okay. So the last one is from a psychologist at the University of Sussex, Stuart Sutherland. Perceptions, thoughts, and feelings. Awareness. This is by far the easiest definition out of all of them. Let's not explore the supernatural nature of it. Let's not spend our time like breaking it up into A consciousness and P consciousness. Like, let's just define it as concretely and as simply as possible. Thoughts, feelings, perceptions, awareness. Boom. Done. Anything else? Not worth reading. Anything else? Not worth reading. We don't care. So this is from a psychologist. I have to say that this idea is perhaps the closest thing to my own thoughts about consciousness, because I go on and on and on and on and on. We could talk about free will. We could talk about unconscious decision making. We could talk about what life is like on an island, the island of your brain. Because your experience is actually different from every other human being's experience that has ever come and will ever be. Think about that for a minute. Like, forget about, like, being made out of star stuff, right? That you have the same constituents of a star. Forget about that. Forget about us floating around on a pale blue rock in the middle of the vast nothingness. Forget about that. Your experience is going to be different and is different from every human that has ever existed, currently existing, or will exist in the future. Not even if you're an identical twin will your experience be the same. That is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling, yes. Put mind in the bottle, right? It's mind-boggling and mind-boggling. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. All right, appreciate it. All right, so let's define it for the sake of our discussion here, so we can talk about some various behavioral aspects. So, awareness. I think that's the first thing, right? You need to be aware of something for you to be conscious of it. This is why when we are asleep, this is considered an altered state of consciousness. An altered state of consciousness. Subjective experience, this is called qualia. Qualia, Q-U-A-L-I-A. And so this is the aspect that I was just talking about, how your experience is going to be different from every human ever. Is because your qualia is yours. Okay, so the redness of an apple, while that might seem insignificant, it is actually quite significant. The lusciousness of ice cream, how smooth and how cold it might be in your mouth, right? What the toppings are in it, right? If you got like strawberry cheesecake ice cream or cookies and cream, how that feels to you when you put it in your mouth. Okay. Economists and other rational thinking psychologists will say that it has to do with decision making. You got to be conscious to make decisions. You got to be conscious to make rational decisions or control your body. And then free will. So whether or not a person has free will. Now, it's very important, and I have a question mark next to it, because it's very important when we talk about consciousness and free will that we have to define free will and whether or not you have control over your own body, or you have control over your, how micro or macro we're going to be with the idea of free will. So Christianity has a strong belief in free will. God imbues us with the ability to make our own choices, to sin or to not sin, etc. And so that deeply held belief is something that people take very seriously, right? I have free will to do my own things. But when you get down to a smaller level, you actually find evidence to suggest that we actually don't have a lot of control over what we do. We don't have a lot of control over what we do. So it depends on... So if you ever get into an argument with somebody about free will, whether you believe in it or you don't, or you're somewhere in the middle, you have to define the parameters of free will, because you could be arguing past somebody. I've had several debates with people. I just recently had this with my cogneuro class. We were talking about consciousness, and people, students would say something like, well, what about this? And I would go, well, what about this? And so you end up talking past each other. And so with that one specifically, you gotta define your parameters before you start arguing. Okay. Okay. So consciousness has something to do with each of those things. And so we want to define the function. And so we'll call these candidate functions because we're not sure. We're not sure what consciousness serves us in our lives. From a functional standpoint, why does it help us be alive? So that's what a function would be. What does it help us do to maintain our life? That is, pass on our genes to newer generations, because that's all our genes want to do. All they want to do is pass along copies of themselves, all right? And create new combinations of copies of themselves, which is why we are, why reproduce sexually, yeah? So, these are the three candidate functions of keeping us alive. Processing and responding to stimuli. I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. We need to be conscious in order to do stuff in our environment. Though with sleep, it's super random. That's why it's called an altered state of consciousness, because you can talk in your sleep, you can walk in your sleep, that sort of thing. Controlling our behavior, right? If I want to raise my hand, I need to be aware that I'm raising my hand, right? And then making decisions on a more macro level. It helps us make decisions, and then we bring in past experiences to help us make those decisions. Okay, so those are the three candidate functions of consciousness. Go ahead and ask a question if you have one about consciousness while I take a bit of a talking break. So if you have any questions, any burning questions about consciousness. Oh, man. All right, no questions? All right, grab out a piece of paper or a Word document or something like that since you're on your computer, because I have several questions for you across 2 slides. And so before I get to that, I'll address Maddie's question here. I'm just confused about how this is controversial and people have different opinions. Aren't we conscious when we're awake? I mean, yeah, we are. But what the controversial debate is what consciousness is and what it's for. Yes, we can say that we are conscious when we are awake, but what is it for? What does it do? What is it? Those are very difficult questions to answer, and among the most difficult in psychology, among the most difficult in philosophy, among the most difficult in all of science to answer. It's perhaps even difficult to answer from a faith-based perspective as well, from a religious experience. What is it? What is consciousness is not something that you can go, what is water? Well, water is wet, just in case you didn't know. Water is an oxygen molecule and 2 hydrogen molecules. Boom, done. It's a liquid. It can also be a solid. It can also be a gas. That's what water is. What is consciousness? Much harder question to answer. Ooh, Spotify Kids. All right, you ready for this sleep activity? So, all I want you to do is answer each question with a yes or a no. And so there are 2, like I said, there are 2 slides. There are 10 questions on this slide. And I think 7 questions on the next slide. So the time period that you're answering is just in general, okay? Maybe think about the last few months, maybe think about the last, half a year, full year. Like, what is your typical behavior like? That's why it's a yes or a no. What is your typical behavior like? in response to these questions. Yes or no? Yes or no? Okay. I'll sit here. If you have any consciousness questions while these are up, go for it. Ask away. Let it you, let it you, let it you. What is question 8? Oh, you know, your get up and go, like your energy, your vibrance in the morning. You feel like your get up and go, you wake up energized, has gotten up and gone. It's a play on words. No, the questions will not be on Brightspace. We're gonna answer. This is an activity we're doing right now. So yes or no right now. Nothing you're gonna be tested on. So no, they're not on. This the rest of the slides are on Brightspace, but these questions aren't. All right. Does anybody need more time on this page? All right. I guess let's go to the final 7. Number 12 is all of us. Number 12 is definitely all of us. By the way, if you hear a rumbling sound when I'm not talking, it's likely Murphy chewing on a bone right above me. Because he's just that kind of dog. Shoo-ba-doop doo 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 doo, shoo-ba-doop doo doo. All right. Does anybody need this one any longer? Okay. One yes is good enough. One yes is good enough. So yes or no, just to these questions. Yes or no. Don't worry. I'm going to explain all of this in great detail. When you are done, if you are done, go ahead and add up all of your yeses. So you should have a score between 0 and 17. Add up all your yeses. So 1 for yes, 0 for no. And then add up all of the ones. Okay, 1 for yes, 0 for no. Add up all the ones. And then go ahead and put your sum in chat. Go ahead, throw your sum up in chat so I can kind of get a a feel for, and then I'll go through each of the I have ranges to tell you about. So we got 11, 10, 14, 13, 9, 12, 13, 13, 5. It's very good, Whitney. 11, 13, 10, 10. Ooh. All right, 10, 10, 10. I wonder what the average is. Where should I try it? Okay. Keep going. 12, 13. Jack, you're vegan. You're vegan, right? Jack vegan? Just double checking. Christine 11, Sam 12. Okay. 10 from Michael. All right. I think average is somewhere around 10 or 11 is what it's looking like. Maybe. Ooh, Madison 15. Yikes. You'll find out why in just a second. So that's the thing, and then so I've got ranges for y'all. Okay, thanks, Jack. 9 for Jalen, Braden 10. Okay. All right, so here's how this breaks down. That sleep activity was assessing what's called sleep debt. Sleep debt. You have a bank account for sleep. So you have a sleep bank account. And the more activities you do, or the more effects that you have from those 17 questions, tend to reflect somebody with accruing sleep debt. Okay, and so we'll talk about sleep and then the effects of sleep deprivation, which is the accrual of sleep debt. So here are some ranges of that scale. Like I said, this is for 0 to 17, right? So if you have 4 or fewer points, I don't know if I saw anybody with 4 or fewer points. That's the number. Those are the numbers for adequate amounts of sleep. Okay? Adequate amounts of sleep. Okay, so no sleep debt or deprivation occurring for 4 or fewer. Oh, thanks, Maddie. If you indicated a 5 or a 6, Whitney, I think you might be the only one. At least, not everybody answered. You're probably getting enough sleep on most days, which is good, right? But there may be days when your account is a bit short, which might cause you to be less than 100% on some activities, right? So you feel good most of the time, but sometimes it's just, I'm a bit sluggish, a bit lethargic. Made a tiny mistake. Oh well, I can fix it. If you got 7 or 8, showing evidence of sleep debt. So this is accumulation of lack of sleep that may cause noticeable reduction in your efficiency at work or school. Shocking. And which may affect your ability to finish all your required activities on time. Things to watch for are little errors and short episodes of inattention. You will occasionally slip up, act clumsy, reach a wrong conclusion, or miss an important detail. Usually at this level, you will catch errors if you have the chance to recheck your work, although the errors that pass you by may be embarrassing or costly. Yeah, Maddie, that's a good observation, but I will tell you that depression likely is affecting sleep patterns, which means you're getting less sleep, which means you're having more sleep debt. Okay, so sleep debt is the effect. Whatever's causing these sleep issues is another story. Okay. 9, 10, or 11, which is, since 10.8 is the average that I see, and many of you are in this group, 9, 10, or 11. With a score at these levels, you definitely have a large sleep debt. There's possibility that you may commit large random errors or omissions in your work, and you may miss small errors even when you go over your work a second time. Things to watch are missed appointments and not remembering that you were given particular information or instructions, although others remember telling you. My gym look for you all. Other telltale symptoms that you might notice are episodes of minor clumsiness, such as dropping or knocking things over more frequently. Sometimes there are mood changes. Especially watch for feelings of reduced motivation, sort of a why bother attitude, or brief bouts of depression or annoyance. There may also be times when you feel just swamped or overworked because of all the tasks that you have to do. It's a lot. So that's about that. That's more than the midpoint of the scale. Okay, so as far as accumulation of debt is concerned, you're accumulating quite a bit of debt. 12, 13, or 14. So if you've got a 12, 13, or 14 up on here, with scores at this level, sleep debt may be taking a major toll on your life, which is a bummer. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you all. Anything above 12 is bad. Okay, not to sugarcoat it at all, not to make you feel bad, but it is bad. And so doing things to get your sleep on track is very important at this stage. Okay, so if you are 12, 13, or 14. In addition to the symptoms that I outlined just a minute ago, your general quality of life may be suffering. You may have inexplicable instances where you make major mistakes on a task or leave out an important item, and you just don't notice until too late. Your patience for doing detailed and close work may be starting to disappear. You may find yourself less interested in many of the things you formerly found fascinating. Okay, all of this is often accompanied by attitudes such as, I don't go to the movies or watch TV shows much anymore because, we're all quarantined. No, I'm just kidding. Because they're all getting so dull, boring, and predictable. These are signs of depression. And predictable, and I just don't have the time and patience anymore to sit and listen to music or read a book or watch TV, whatever. You may also be a bit more accident prone. Okay, you may be noticing more near misses when you drive or find out that you cut or burn yourself, spill things, or bump into people and things more frequently. You may have occasional cries in public or confidence, such as misgivings about your overall competence, like, I'm stupid, I don't know why I'm doing things, what am I doing? This may be even more this may have some more temporary memory effects, so being forgetful, either temporarily or long term. Being unsure that you correctly even remember where your home, business, or school addresses are located, phone numbers, or other familiar details like passwords and logins and all sorts of things. Okay. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. That's a whole damn lot. If you got 15, 16, or 17, which I see, Madison, I'm so sorry. Scores like this suggest sleep debt is a major problem. In fact, your levels of sleepiness are in the range often found in people with depression or other mental health issues, including disorders like insomnia. Okay? So depression, insomnia, other mental health issues that can also be related to psychotic disorders, that sort of thing. So let me know in chat how many hours of sleep you're getting these days. Okay. Let me know how many hours of sleep you're getting, because you should be getting about 8. Seven to 8? That's not bad, Sean. That's not bad. It's good. It's good. But you also scored a 10, so I'm not sure. 10 if you include naps. 8 if I'm not on TikTok. Yeah, that TikTok's gonna ruin people's lives, man. 6. Okay, 3 to 5. TikTok and Modern Warfare got me up. Ashton, go to sleep, man. Video games are not that important. I do have some routines, Elena. I will hopefully have time to talk about those toward the end here. Yeah, TikTok is an extreme addiction. Yeah, I feel you on that one. I have other addictions, but electronic addictions also, I'll say. Grind can't stop. Go to sleep. Oh, Ben, 5. No. 5 and then go to sleep for 5 more. That's also not great. It's also not great. At least I make it. Yeah, that is true. That is very true. I'm very proud of you. Oh man. 10 to 13 now, Maya. Wow. There is something to be said about sleeping too much, by the way. Sleeping too much. This can also damage your body. There's a lot of napping going on, yeah. Jordan, I imagine that must be nice. My kids don't nap anymore, so I don't get to nap anymore. So, what are naps? I miss them. 5 to 6 in naps, Donovan. That's not bad. Naps, though, I will say, need to be done very carefully and executed properly. Otherwise, they're not going to be helpful. So that's only since coronavirus started. Okay. Is napping bad? No, by no means, Kyler, is napping bad. But like I just said, you have to execute them very specifically, or you will not reap the benefits of it. It will just feel worse than if you didn't nap at all. So just bear that in mind. So here's a sleep cycle. Thanks everyone for jumping in there. Yeah, Jordan, power naps, 20 minutes, even potentially even less. But it depends on what you're doing the nap for. So I'll talk about that when after I'm done talking about the regular sleep cycle. So a night's worth of sleep. Okay. That's important, right? The 10 to 13 versus the 6 to 8, that's very important. And so you can, like I said, there's something to be said about too much sleeping and how it can potentially be maybe not as dangerous as sleep deprivation, but potentially damaging in a more modest form, maybe a more pernicious form if you just sleep too much. But that can also be a sign of depression and things like that, and other mental health issues too. So here's a typical sleep cycle. It's comprised of 4 stages of what is called non-REM sleep, or NREM. And then REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. So we have got 4 stages where your eyes don't move that much, and then we've got 1 stage where it moves quite a bit. Okay, and this is what it looks like over the course of an 8-hour night. Okay, so we are diurnal animals. We spend most of our time sleeping at night because we have poor night vision. And vision is our best sense and our most developed sense. And so if we have our best sense sucks at night, then the best thing to do is to be immobile at night. And so this is what a night looks like. And this is what happens with each stage. So you start out as awake, obviously, and then you spend, 5 to 10 to 30 minutes in each stage. You first drop into what you can see here with marked by the S. This is marked for like deep sleep. Okay, stages 3 and 4 are essentially deep sleep, where you're not moving, your blood pressure, your heart rate, and your breathing is at the absolute lowest. Okay, and then you cycle through, going between REM and non-REM throughout the night. And then so you get REM up here, and then you go back to deep sleep, and then you get REM, and then you go back to a slightly lighter deep sleep in stage 3. Then you go back up to REM, and REM, and then you wake up. Now you can see here D. You see this D? On this graph, that stands for dreaming. Okay, we talked about dreaming on Tuesday with the grab bag psych. Okay, so dreaming most of the time occurs during rapid eye movement sleep. Okay, and rapid eye movement sleep resembles the space in between stage 1 and stage 2. Okay, and it looks like this jagged plateau of stuff because we're talking about time, and so it's not a smooth curve because you spend time plateauing in various stages. Okay, so that's why it looks rectangular. Okay, so we're going to go through each of these stages kind of quickly. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to show you is this is a sleep pattern from me. So I have an app that records my sleep while I wear my Apple Watch at night. Last semester I got a question like, how do you sleep with a watch on? You barely notice it, depending on how you sleep. Now, if you sleep literally on your wrist, then I'm sure you'll have a deep indentation on your face, but I don't recognize it. And you can, so this app here shows my sleep stages, okay? And so awake is green, light sleep is this lighter blue, and then we have 2 shades of purple for still and deep. What I think I recognize from this is that still is about stage 3, and deep is about stage 4. I'm pretty sure. Okay, and so you can see how I just jump up and down, and this red line here represents every 15 minutes my heart rate. Okay, and so you can see that my heart rate will dip, and I'll go into deep sleep. It'll rise again, and I'll wake up. Okay, and then this is waking up. Okay, and you can see here that's a 5:30 that morning. So good. I just love waking up at 5:30, you know. And you can see this entire, and then I went to bed about 10. Yeah, that is me. I gotta go to bed at like 10 o'clock these days, and then I sleep all the way through. No, that's not true. This is actually like a really good night's sleep where I didn't wake up at all during the middle of the night, but most of the time I do wake up. If it's not kids, it's going to the bathroom, noises, that sort of thing. So this is a candidate for a really good night Dr. Swan sleep. So it's total 8 hours, 8 minutes, and then you can break it down in all of those kinds of ways. So I think it's really cool. So if you wear a fitness tracker, an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, some other kind of tracker, I don't know, Samsung Watch, I don't know what they're called. I recommend this if you're really curious to do that. Okay. So stage 1 is basically drowsy sleep. You have a lot of brain activity going on. Your eyes are kind of moving a little bit, but mostly not. They kind of roll. They do that. You may be familiar with the rolling of the eyes back. You know, they may roll up or roll down or something like that because you become really loose. Your muscles are loose, pretty much all throughout your body. This is the stage where people are like, if you're falling asleep sitting up, you know, like in class or something, and you go like this, that's because your neck muscles become really relaxed, and so you just go forward. And then, because your head is moving forward so fast, your vestibular sense is like, oh my god, we're falling. And so that's why you jerk back up. And you're like, I wasn't asleep. No, professor, I wasn't asleep. That wasn't me. Lots of brain activity, though. So this is drowsy sleep. It either wakes somebody up from this. People generally wake themselves up from this kind of thing. Lots of muscle twitching as well. So I asked my health psych class if they are muscle twitchers. Let me know in chat if you are a twitcher. Not to be confused with being on Twitch right now. But if you are a muscle twitcher while you are falling asleep. Some people like full on like convulse when they're falling asleep. It's the stage of sleep your grandparents do in their chairs. And then their eyes are closed, and you're like, hey, grandma, grandpa, wake up. And they're like, I'm not asleep. And my grandmother used to do this all the time. She would be just like, I'm just resting my eyes. Friggin' liar. You are a liar and a cheat. You are falling asleep. You had no idea what I just said to you. Stage 2. This is when your cardiovascular system's like, all right, I'm going to prepare you for deep sleep. So deep sleep is characterized by low respiratory rate, low heart rate, and low blood pressure. Okay? Because there's no reason for your heart to be moving blood that quickly. Your body is doing other things, like resting. Okay? And your body, so as by virtue of lower blood pressure and lower heart rate, your body temperature is going to drop as well. And this is all prep for deep sleep. This is all prep for like turning on a different state of consciousness. And the brainwaves that are signified by stage 2 are these large fluctuations of voltage. So just like really slow, lumbering brainwave patterns. Those are called K complexes. And then really, really fast bursts of brainwave activity, which are called sleep spindles. And so if an EEG records these two, then we know that the person is in stage 2. Okay? Because those are like really strong characteristics for stage 2. Stage 3 and 4 I've collapsed. Because they're mostly delta wave patterns, and I'll show you. Let me go ahead and put those on there, so you can see the differences between stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 and 4. So we combine them because they represent the same kind of thing. And you can see that they're large fluctuations. There's a lot of activity, but it's slow. It's not really, you're not solving complex math problems. Okay. And here's a sleep spindle, and here's a K complex in stage 2. And then in stage 1, it's pretty much all over the place. There's really no pattern in these theta waves at all. When you're awake, your alpha waves your brain waves are either alpha or beta. So we have alpha, beta while you're awake, theta in stage 1, theta in stage 2 with sleep spindles and K complexes, and then which are reminiscent of delta waves, and then in stage 3 and 4 are delta waves. Okay. Lower frequency. Now, stage 3 and 4 is when parasomnias occur. And so we started today by talking about whether or not you talk in your sleep, like the music video. Okay. So that is called somniloquy. And it is my favorite word in the English language. Somniloquy. Okay. Somniloquy. You know, you've probably heard of Shakespeare's soliloquies. Okay. This is somniloquy. This is poetry in your sleep. But most of the time, it's not poetry. Most of the time, it's, I don't want to go there. I'm going to beat you up. Where am I? Those kinds of... That's beautiful, isn't it? Then there's somnambulism. Who's a sleepwalker? Let me know who's a sleepwalker. My sister's a sleepwalker. She's a somnambulist. People can navigate the craziest things when they're sleepwalking. People can navigate stairs well. We'll go in and grab stuff from the fridge to eat food. And a couple of other ones. There's a lot of them, but a couple of other more common ones are night terrors. Lots of kids have night terrors. This is characterized by thrashing. Okay? It's characterized by thrashing, screaming, the inability to wake somebody up from it. Even if their eyes are open, they still might be having the terror. These are not nightmares. Nightmares are bad dreams. And you are likely paralyzed while you are dreaming. Because REM sleep paralyzes you, creates a situation of atonia. Okay, atonia, which is muscle paralysis, basically from the neck down. And so night terrors, since they occur during stage 3 and 4, which is non-REM sleep, then you can move around, you can thrash, and you can do all of this stuff. Both my kids, unfortunately, suffer from night terrors. Yeah, Elena, they're pretty gnarly. It's very difficult to wake my son up, and he's gonna be 6 this month. It's very difficult to wake him up from a night terror. And also, segue, developmentally appropriate. He has the occasional nocturnal enuresis, which is wetting the bed. And if you are an adult and having nocturnal enuresis, there's probably an underlying medical condition that you will need to investigate. Jordan, what's called when you move a lot in your sleep? Well, it depends on what kind of movement you're talking about. If you just are tossing and turning, it's probably because you're uncomfortable. But if it's twitching, then you're probably twitching during non-REM sleep and not during REM. But I mean, I rotisserize throughout the night. I rotisserize. You know, I sleep on my side. I sleep on my back. I sleep on my stomach. I mean, I'm pretty much all over the place. There are some people who will fall asleep at in one position, and then to be there when they wake up 8 hours later. So I'm like, who are you? Can you give me that power? Okay, so why do we sleep? What is it when you jump out of your sleep? Can you explain that in a different way, Kyler? I'm not fully understanding your question. Also, maybe rephrase for me, and I'll come back to that, please. So let's talk about the functions of sleep very quickly. So the first function is to protect ourselves. Like I said, we have poor night vision, and predators have good night vision. Big cats, scary dogs. You know, back when we were hunter-gatherers. Other animals would eat us if we were awake and doing stuff in the middle of the night. So let's not do that. So we protect ourselves. We find a way to hide and be immobile. Just keeps us alive. To recuperate from the day's activities. Okay, so doing stuff, you know, accelerates damage to our body. Whether that damage was useful or not is, you know, another topic for another day, but we do things during the day that potentially damage our body, and so we need to recuperate from all of that. So all the hard work that we do, all of the tiredness that we feel, the exercise, the physical activity, all of that stuff needs to then be recuperated. And so that's another function of sleep, to recuperate. Growth. This obviously applies to children more than anyone else, but most children grow during sleep because when they're awake, biological resources, are used for growing, or used for other things like running and jumping and doing brain activity. And so for children, when they sleep, that's when the bones increase their size. That's when muscles stretch. That's when ligaments grow and all sorts of things, right? And so that child gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and most of that is happening overnight or during sleep. And so many of you found that you can definitely talk about this with respect to learning, but only the stuff that you did earlier in that day. So is the learning happening while you sleep? No, because you made the connections earlier. So as this applies to the myth, as this applies to the claim that I gave you, you will then strengthen those connections through a process called consolidation. So did the learning happen while you were asleep? No, it happened earlier, and then you strengthen those through a process of consolidation. Get rid of the bad connections, strengthen the good connections, right? Kyler, so laying on your desk, and it's like you get an impulse that makes you wake up. Oh yeah, the myoclonic jerk. When you feel like you're falling, and you wake up because you jerk, so that's called a myoclonic jerk. It's the perception that you are falling, and so if we have the perception that we are falling, we are going to jerk awake, because our vestibular sense needs to know where our head is. And if you feel that you are falling, then of course you need to verify whether or not you're falling, and so that's called a myoclonic jerk. And so if you ever have the sensation of jerking yourself awake, or because you are falling or you jump or something like that. It's like a jump, right? Myoclonic jerk. So those are the functions of sleep. Just very briefly, I know that, so we could have talked about this with dreams, but rapid eye movement, it's paradoxical, so you don't, you are paralyzed with it, and it's when most dreaming occurs. Brainwaves resemble wakefulness, right? So you basically go back up to stage 2, between 1 and 2. Your brainwaves look like you're awake, but obviously you're not, and you're paralyzed unless you have REM behavior disorder. If you have REM behavior disorder, then you will likely wake up paralyzed. It's actually this is actually fairly common, REM behavior disorder. Sleep paralysis is when you wake up paralyzed. REM behavior disorder is the other one where you act out your dreams. That's right. Sorry, I mixed that up. So REM behavior disorder is where you act out your dreams, which is not good because you should be paralyzed. And then sleep paralysis is when you wake up paralyzed. And the thing that most people share when they wake up with sleep paralysis is that they see shadowy figures in the room around them. You can't really move your head. You can move your eyeballs. And they see shadowy figures. And those figures are coming toward you or moving around you. Some people say that they hear whispers. Good old hallucinations for sleep paralysis, right? So we have 2 REM disorders: sleep paralysis, waking up paralyzed, in a state of atonia, and then REM behavior disorder, where you act out your dreams because you are not atonic. Okay. So we already did that one. So sleep deprivation. Okay, these are your sleep deprivation effects. The story that I have for you is one from high school. I had 2 friends. I think we were juniors or seniors. So this is coming up on 20 years ago. They decided, these 2 friends, against my, because I really do enjoy sleep, and so when I was in high school, I slept a lot. But against my cautions, they decided to go and have a competition on who could beat the other in no sleep, who could not sleep the longest, right? And they started hallucinating bad by like the 3rd night. Bad. I don't recommend doing this ever, okay? But one of my friends, I'll never forget the story because it's so amazing. He still did a nighttime routine, and so, at night, at bedtime, he would go like brush his teeth and whatnot, right? As you do, brush your teeth twice a day, right? And so by the 3rd night, I believe it was the 3rd night. It's been almost 20 years, so I should probably ask him. But by the 3rd night, he goes to brush his teeth, and he looks down at his toothbrush. And his toothbrush has a face. And it starts speaking to him. And it says, in this voice, brush your teeth. And he stared at it. And he was very shocked. But he took its advice. Brush your teeth. And brushed his teeth. Yeah. So that's what happens when you don't go to sleep. You start hallucinating. It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea to do that. Decreased concentration, like I said, weight gain, higher risk for depression, other mood disturbances, so like mood swings back and forth, like I'm irritated, I'm happy, I'm irritated, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm irritated, I'm happy, that kind of stuff. And then decreased immune functioning, so you can't fight the coronavirus. Right? You gotta fight the coronavirus. Of course. Come on now. Gotta have that immune system to fight COVID-19. You gotta do it. So what does that mean? Get that sleep. 7 to 8 hours a night. Right? Tell you what. Brush your teeth. Alright. I'm not gonna play this clip, but you can go look it up if you want to. It's when Howie Mandel on America's Got Talent was hypnotized to shake people's hands. So if you're not aware, or if you don't watch America's Got Talent, or you don't know anything about Howie Mandel, he is a germaphobe. He has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. We'll talk about that more later this month when we get to psychopathology, because it's an anxiety disorder. He's a germaphobe. He does not like touching other people. One of the reasons why he shaved his head is because he thought his hair was dirty. Okay, he thinks hair just holds on to a lot of germs and dirt and things like that. So he doesn't like shaking hands. And so this hypnotist, the guy in the hat, who is shaking Howie's hand, apparently put him into a hypnotic trance and convinced him that he was wearing a very thin see-through glove. And so he shook his hand, and he shook Howard Stern's hands. This is a few years old when Howard Stern and Mel B and Heidi were judges on the show, and he had them and he was completely oblivious to this ruse. Okay, and he would shake these people's hands. And so this myth, the idea behind this myth or this claim of learning while you sleep, tends to come from the world of hypnosis. Whether I think this is real is I don't think it's real, but that's just me. If you think it's real, then that's fine. People are suggestible, which is nice too. Whether he did it for the laughs, whether he did it for the entertainment, whether he had a can of Purell ready to stick his hands into, Also, not good COVID behavior. Do not do that. They should not be shaking hands right now. Don't do that. Okay? So, this myth seems to exist because of going into an altered state tends to be something that makes you more suggestible. Okay? And so, my final question to you is whether or not you believe in hypnosis. So, whether it's real, that's up to you. Okay. There is no empirical evidence to suggest hypnosis exists, but you may have gone to that the Mentalist show last semester with that Mentalist guy and the hypnosis thing, and you may have seen that in person. I don't know. Depends. Something like AGT, America's Got Talent. I'm gonna say that the production value of that show lends itself to something that seems farcical. So, the other thing that I wanted to relate it to as we end class, if you've got to run, go for it. I'm just going to finish this recording here in just a second. So you may be familiar with these things that you can listen to overnight. So this is I'm not going to play it, but this is an 8-hour YouTube video. 8 hours. And you're supposed to play it overnight. Okay, and it reflects the subliminal messages idea, and perhaps why this myth persists and why some people believe that it's true is that even when we're asleep, we can gather information, and that information can help us. So throughout this 8 hours, there's very calming music, and every so often a voice will say, "You are competent, you are good, everything is okay," right? Throughout the 8 hours, there's a voice that'll be, very praiseworthy and supportive. And the idea is that you'll wake up feeling these things, and you'll feel better after you wake up. And so you can clearly see that it says sleep hypnosis session, right? So whether or not you believe hypnosis, you could potentially try one of these things. Is it learning? No, it is not learning. Okay, it is not learning. Nothing about hypnosis reflects learning. You cannot learn while you sleep. You cannot do new things while you sleep. Okay, and wake up feeling that you can do that new thing. I'm not going to go to sleep right now, play Space Jam while I'm sleeping, and be like, yeah, I'm going to go play basketball right now. I'm going to dunk on everyone. No. That's not how it works, right? So on Tuesday, before we talk about the next thing, I there is another claim due next week. Before we talk about the next thing, I do have a fun game for everyone to play, which follows this subliminal messages idea. It's a hard game, but we're going to play the game. And so that's the first thing we're going to do is play this game on Tuesday. But thanks for everyone to come into class, participating in chat. I appreciate it. And have a good weekend. And enjoy the nicer weather. Hopefully April brings warmth to us all. All right. So that's the end of today. Bye, y'all.